As Jan mentioned, this session is using PCC tools to connect your data safely and securely. My name is Lewis Holcroft, and I work for PCC on the technical solutions team. For a while, it's been 22 years or so now that I've been here doing stuff. And over that time, I've worked with many of you that are out there doing all kinds of things to try and get you connected from home, especially with all the fun we've been having for the last 2 months. It was like one day it was go to work. The next day it was how do we get to work remotely? So I'm going to cover some of those things today, specifically a couple of the tools we've been using, and take some time during this to break out and do a little show and tell of a few things. If you have questions, post them to the Mattermost live chat, and I will hopefully see them out of the corner of my eye on the other screen, or Jan will wave at me from the booth, or something like that will happen. So here we go. Just covered this part right here. We're going to ask for you to post in the chat session, and we'll take some time for questions and get some answers out to you a little bit later on. Apparently Jan's going to read them out loud at some point when they come in, which is awesome. Alrighty, so we've got a few goals for today's session. We're going to talk about the way you can connect to PCC system, but ahead of that, there's a couple of other things, and that is, like, we want you to understand want everybody to understand why security is important and what it is we're trying to keep secure and why that matters. So we're going to cover that. We're also going to cover the tools to use and why those tools change. What we do now, May of 2020 is not the way we did things in May of 2019, and 2018 it was different again. So this is a constantly changing arena. So the products we provide and the way you access the system are going to change on not a regular basis, but they're going to change. And as you know now, we're all about change because nothing's the same as it was. All right, so the primary thing we care about security is because the federal government has determined that there are certain information about your patients that is protected by federal law. And that's a primary reason we care. We also care because it's the right thing to do. You don't want to leave a chart in your car or hand it to some random person on the street and say, take a look at this. That's not what it's about. So that's an important part about security. Things that you can do to help reduce the risk of leaking that information is also an important thing to consider. A lot of this is on you, the end user. I'm going to suggest that you use a strong password. And I've got a couple of examples here about 2 items, very similar, relatively simple to remember, but they have completely different risk factors associated with them when it comes time to try and do password guessing. And there are people out on the internet who spend all their day doing that. They are trying to seek information, whether it's information about a patient, whether it's a credit card number, social security number. There are lots of people out there who are trying to gain information and use it some way. Most of the time, they're trying to gain money from doing this. If they have a collection of information, it may have value. And then once they've gotten rid of it, they don't care. They'll move on to the next thing. So I'm just going to break away from this presentation for a moment and just go over these 2 things. So in one of my other web browser tabs here, if I can actually get to it because my little menu bar is in the way, I have this little web page. How secure is my password? Now, in this, I'm just going to demonstrate. I'm going to type apples into here, and you can see in that little box below, it simply says your password will be cracked indefinitely. There are things that I can do to that word to make them more complicated. I can add numbers. I can add special characters. The other option I said, showed you back on the slide, was instead of using a word, you can use a phrase. Apple's a good question mark. In many places where we require passwords and many services require passwords, you can use passphrases. So if I use that instead, all of a sudden, my password, which is still simple to remember, has become exceptionally complicated to crack. Don't know about you, but I'm hoping I'm not going to be here in 330 billion years. I could be, but I probably wouldn't look quite as good as I do now, and that's not really saying a whole lot. So, all right. So, simple website. I just Googled this and found it, and it's a good tool to test to see whether your password or whether the passwords you plan on using are actually going to be useful to you, relatively easy to remember, and whether they're going to provide a decent level of security. In addition to just throwing them into that website and checking some stuff, and you'll notice I'm not actually using real passwords here. I'm just using examples. I don't recommend you go type your password into a website just to test it. This is a little bit of a guide there about what you can do. In addition to this, there are also a number of tools on the market that allow you to generate random passwords on the fly, and they will actually track them for you in a single place. I use one myself. I'm not saying it's a tool that you should use, but I happen to use a tool where I've set a very strong password, and then as I go to other websites, it allows me to generate completely random letters and numbers, and it will remember them, and I can access it from my phone, from my computer, as long as I can remember that initial password, which is a good, strong password. All right, moving on. So this is important, and I wouldn't put the slide up here if I hadn't seen it done. Do not share your account password with anybody, ever. Ever. I mean, there are people who do it. Now, you know, there are certain pieces of information that you need to protect. They're very, very important around things. Your username, your password, a token if you happen to have one. They're all very important. Sometimes there's pieces of that information that we're going to need. For example, if you contact PCC and you're having a problem with your account, we're going to at least ask you your username, because without that, we can't even start to try and troubleshoot some of the problems. We shouldn't be asking you for your password, and we shouldn't be asking you for your token. We may enter you to type it in on a screen where we can see the little dots show up, but we're not going to ask you for it. And if you do, well, there's the response. We do not, it is your data, it's your information, and if you're not comfortable giving somebody the password, tell them, I'm not giving you the password. I'm sorry, we have to find a different way of doing this. And hopefully they're going to take that and they're going to go with it. All right, so having discussed the security stuff, we're going to talk a little bit about accessing your PCC system. It doesn't matter whether you use, what method you use from the options we present you. In almost every case, a user is going to need to be authorized first to be able to remotely access the system. A lot of the time, you're going to need to reach out to support to do that. There are a few exceptions within within PCC EHR. There are a couple of features that can be just handled inside the PCC EHR authorization tool, but many of the remote access features require PCC be informed so we can add that user to a remote access group. So that's an important thing, because if we don't do that part, you can do the rest of the stuff I'm going to show you or talk about in this session, but you're going to come up with a big red screen saying no every single time. All right, so there's several ways to access your system and the patient data on the system. You can access the system using RDP. That's the way we did it quite a few years ago. You can use OpenVPN, which is a computer-to-computer VPN solution. You can use SecureConnect, which is a product that PCC put together with the Apache Guacamole project. There's the patient portal and Pocket PCC. Now, the patient portal was actually covered quite extensively yesterday in a web lab, and that video is online, and I'm not going to cover that today. And Pocket PCC is its own tool, and there are great resources on our website, learn.pcc.com, for you to be able to check out that tool and see all the things you can do in it. Once again, these two products, Patient Portal and Pocket PCC, much like the EHR, have features added and enhanced just about every release that we do. All right, note about RDP. It's available from Microsoft, and it works on a number of platforms: the Windows platform, the Macintosh or OS X platform, and it's even available on some Linux distributions. It's very simple to use, but it's no longer considered completely secure by itself. It's gone through several iterations, and it's better, but because of the feature set of making things backwards compatible, you can still use an old, not so up-to-date product to connect to a relatively new product, and it's only really as good as your username password combination. So, so essentially, if somebody's got your username and password, they're potentially going to be gaining access to your system. So nowadays, we suggest it's used along with a VPN solution. One of those solutions is OpenVPN. OpenVPN is a term that PCC uses for the server side of the product, and on the client side, so on your personal computers, we use OpenVPN on the Windows side of things and TunnelBlick on the Mac side of things. Once again, it's also available on not just those platforms. It's more complex to use than RDP. It requires that we install software as well as distribute a certificate, and it is very secure. SecureConnect is a little different. SecureConnect is actually a web browser-based tool, so pretty much everybody has a web browser on their computer. In that respect, it makes it simpler to use. It does use a token, a second item, and it's also very secure. So just to summarize, we're just going to talk a little bit about RDP, OpenVPN, and SecureConnect. RDP is no longer considered secure, so we're pretty much going to rule it out unless we're going to use it with OpenVPN. Better yet, use OpenVPN with PCC EHR on your desktop, and then it's just your EHR session talking directly to your server in your office using the VPN connection. If you want to go that route, and then it's a complicated procedure. It's something that we do, but it's not the first choice when we want to start giving people remote access, just from a sheer starting and getting to where you need to go as quickly and easily as possible. SecureConnect here, it's also secure, but it's less complicated than the PCC EHR with OpenVPN. So to that end, SecureConnect has become PCC support staff's first choice for having you access your system remotely. And OpenVPN and PCC EHR is the second choice, just simply because SecureConnect is a lot simpler to get going with. It doesn't have all the same bells and whistles, but for 99% of the people who need to be able to access the system remotely, it's a perfectly adequate tool. All right, a note about SecureConnect here. Because it uses a web browser, and it can be any web browser, but some work better than others, we like that. And then it uses something called two-factor authentication. So two-factor authentication here, essentially, instead of the situation where you're just entering your username and your password, the two-factor authentication is something else as well. And I've highlighted it here. I'm going to use these colors on other slides. Two-factor authentication indicates there's something that you have physically and something that you know. So if we think back to a relatively older technology, for the banking industry, the ATM card was something you had, and the PIN number is something that's in your brain and you know it and you key it in when you go somewhere. And generally those two things aren't kept together. I mean, the bank does send it to you in a little email, or not an email, in an envelope at some point. They encourage you to change it, and hopefully it's not written on your ATM card. Should you lose your wallet, that would be bad. And the token method that we're talking about with two-factor is there's a token, which is something you have in credentials. If you're familiar with our ERX product, we give, as part of that process, there's a hard token. It's a little gizmo with a number that keeps cycling by over and over and over again. And you use that in connection with your credentials. And that's two-factor authentication used in the ERX world. So for our token, our two-factor authentication part, the thing that we have, we use our phone, and we use an application on the phone called Authy. Now, we chose Authy. We could have chosen any number of tools. There are dozens out there. Google have one, Microsoft have one of their own, Symantec make them. But the reason we used Authy is because we'd already started using that platform with our ERX solution when probably 2-3 years ago, when we switched to a vendor that supported it. So it was just, we shouldn't give you another tool to use because you don't need 27 things in your phone just to get the same thing accomplished. So we chose to use Authy as our authentication token. All right, so we're going to get started on the actual SecureConnect process right now. I just want to point out these resource pages. Learn.pcc.com is our base where we keep lots and lots of documentation. And then there's a specific link here about connecting from home. And I'm just going to take a moment here to click on over to our home page for learn.pcc.com. Hopefully this is not anything new to you folks. It's something you've seen. And this is where we are keeping updated documentation about this process. The slide decks associated with this presentation are going to end up there at some point, along with links to videos. We have links to videos that we make for our upcoming releases. So this is your go-to place for pretty much everything PCC. And if you can't find the answer there, you can call our support staff, who will likely look it up here. And when they can't find it, they'll go ask somebody that knows, because that's how I roll. I mean, I look here at all kinds of stuff. And then also, this is a link specifically to connecting from home. And we're going to go through the items on this page in a quick demo in just a few minutes. So that's where we're at with getting started with the resources. Couple of things about Authy. Authy is an application. It's not PCC's. It's available from Google Play and the App Store. I would suggest you go and download it and go through its setup and installation procedure before you attempt to reach out to PCC and get your remote access set up, simply because you will have completed one of the, probably the most complicated of the task by just going through their setup routine. Authy offers a couple of options on the phone. They also offer an option for an iPad and for a desktop and stuff like that. We don't recommend that simply because we're looking to give you a token that is reasonably sized that you can take with you. So here's my phone, and well, my ugly phone, but this is a phone, and this is about as big as we want to get. Carrying an iPhone is, sorry, not an iPhone, carrying an iPad around for security purposes is just going to be a little more cumbersome. And then if you don't download the application and you put it on its desktop, then the thing you have is very close to the thing that you know And there's a risk of saving your password on your computer and then having the key right there, and it defeats some of the security. So strongly recommend using your phone as your tool, and it's our recommended solution. Alrighty. Inside the Authy app, one of the setup steps asks you to set up a strong password, and it's tied to your Authy app. And it's important that you set it, because when you get a new phone, and you'll notice I said if first, but now it's when you get a new phone, if you don't recall that password, you are going to have to start from scratch with any of the authentication tokens that you've put in your Authy app. So in theory, you're going to have two in a typical PCC environment. You're going to have, as a clinician, you're going to have one for your ERX side of things, and then you're going to have a second one, a separate ID in Authy for your remote connection to the system. Alrighty, so before, I already mentioned this, but it's a good idea to get Authy on your device and go through steps 1 of 3 of our Learn article before you start trying to access the system. Everybody who's going to use the SecureConnect is going to access, it's going to vary, the web address is going to vary based on the client name. So on this slide where I say Acro, that's actually your practice. So for our users conference, the practice is called uc.pcc.com, or the Acro is UC. Hopefully as clients, you know what your acronym is. Generally it's a 3 to 5, sometimes longer letter word. It describes your practice. Hopefully you know it. If you don't, then you can reach out to our support folks and we can help you answer that question. It is a web URL and you can put it into any computer anywhere in the world. I say that because that's one of the reasons we also like SecureConnect. It is, as long as you've got your password in your brain and your username in your brain and the token on your phone and it's with you, you can access your system from practically anywhere. I've had people travel to Germany and access it while they were on vacation in Germany. I've had people travel to India and made sure this was working before they went. So just in case they did need to access the system, they could do so. So it's a great option. You can do it from the library. You can do it from just about any computer. If you're at a friend's house and you don't have your computer with you, you can use it. If you're at the grandkids, same deal. All right, so I'm going to just go through the process now of jumping onto SecureConnect at PCC and going through the process just once for accessing the system as if it's never been accessed before. So hop on this link right here. This is uc.pcc.com. It's we're using HTTPS. The S is for secure. And I'm going to go ahead and enter a username right here and the user's password. And I'm going to attempt to log in. And I get a big red invalid login. Now this is on purpose. I mentioned before that if you don't reach out to PCC and have a user authorized, they can't connect remotely. This user, user 90, is not a valid user. We have not allowed this user access to the system remotely. So you can't even enter even the good username and password to move forward. When you do, if you do and you get this invalid login, it generally indicates a step was missed with PCC. User 89, however, is a little different. User 89 is in the list of remote accessible users, and as a result, I am now presented the multi-factor code to let me set up this account. So in our instructions, we've done steps 1 through 3, which means we've got the Authy app on our phone. At this point, this is where you would launch the Authy app on your phone and potentially take an image here. And I'm going to say I'm going to attempt this because earlier on, I was trying to test this and wasn't sure if it was going to work. So we're going to give it a shot and see if it works. So I'm going to try and share my phone right now, and we'll see if it will do so. Apparently it might, or it might not. We'll see. That apparently is a big fat no, so let's not try that anymore. All right. Let me go back to sharing the slide. All right, so that didn't work. However, I came prepared. If we actually scroll down our instructions here, what I was going to demonstrate was once you've installed your application, you need to add an account. When you click on adding an account, your Authy app is going to ask you to take your phone, make sure that your Authy app is allowed to access the camera on your phone, and take a photograph or point it at the barcode. Once that happens, your phone is going to, go a little bit further, your phone is going to present a little code on it, such as this. I'm going to quickly go back over to my SecureConnect page here. I'm afraid you're going to have to believe me when I say I'm going to add an account, but here's the phone. We're going to go to our Authy app, and we're going to choose Add. And apparently my phone screen won't show up on camera because of the blue screen feature. I'm going to scan the QR code on my screen, at which point it's going to ask me to identify this connection. So I'm just going to pop back up our little thing here. We're going to ask you to give it a sensible name. PCC Secure Connect is the default that comes up, and it's also going to have a logo associated with it. And I will say this part of the process frequently confuses people because it says wrong logo question mark. That's simply asking you if you want to change the logo. It's not telling you did something wrong. It's just poorly worded. So once you've put in your account name and select done, your phone is going to show you a 6-digit ID. Once you have that 6-digit ID, back on our screen over here, we're going to have to enter the valid code into this box. Now, if you don't do this step, or if you refresh your screen, this all gets flushed. It's not retained. Until you've put in the code that matches and hit continue, I get a failure. I was too slow. The code I typed in cycled by on my phone. So in order to mitigate that, what I'm actually going to do is go through the sign-in process, and instead of pausing 100 times, I'm actually going to just type in the code. All right. All right, deathly silence there, but it let me in. All right, so that's the process. Now, the good news is you only have to do that once. The first time you connect is the only time it's going to ask you to scan the code and type the code in. At this point, we are now logged into the system, and we've got our little start button down here. Now, you will have noticed on the screen that my computer asked me if I wanted to remember that password and save it for later. I always answer that question, no, never, because I don't want my computer to remember my password and somebody get a hold of my computer while I'm not paying attention and just be able to access things randomly. So I never save my passwords in the web browser tools for stuff like this. It's just, I just remember it. I know what it is. If I need to change it, I need to change it. But I don't record them on purpose. So now we're into the system, and this is the EHR, just like you're used to seeing just about everywhere else. And it's happening inside the web browser. I'm going to cancel here and go to log out, because when you're done, you do need to log out. And when you're logging out, this SecureConnect feature gives us a wrapper. It'll either say reconnect, in which case it'll connect us back to our PCC session, or we can log out and it takes us back to the beginning. So here we are. We've gone through this process for user 89 once. We had to enter the, scan the code and enter the token. This time around, it's going to be a little different. This time, when I connect as user 89 and log in, it doesn't ask me to present, it doesn't present a barcode. It simply asks me to type in my 6-digit number. And when I do that, it lets me in. I'm going to take this moment here and just mention that the two-factor authentication method we use is time-based. So every 30 seconds, the 6-digit code is going to cycle. And I know occasionally when there's like 4 or 5 seconds to go, it's like, oh, I gotta wait. There is a margin of error here because not everybody's phone keeps perfect time, and not everybody's computer keeps perfect time. But as long as your computer and your phone are close, within 30 seconds to 2 minutes of the actual real time, you should be good. So if you're halfway through typing it in and the code disappears and you're like, oh, I've got to wait again, just carry on and keep going. The only problem we've had with the authentication token has been related to daylight savings time. And twice a year, the clocks change. And if you have your phone or the computer that you're accessing the system from set to automatically update the time in your time zone, that's great. If your time zone is wrong, not so good. So a little note here is you want the time on your phone and the time on your computer to be set to update to the time zone and daylight savings time automatically. So most new computers, I will say all new Windows computers come with the time zone set to Pacific time. And you can set the time to be the right time, but if you don't fix the time zone, you're going to run into problems. So that's a little note about connecting with SecureConnect and time-based tokens. All right, I am going to log out one more time here and mention one other thing about connecting with SecureConnect. It is important that you maximize your web browser screen before you connect to the system. If you do it afterwards, you'll just end up with black space on your login screen. You won't be able to, you can't make the screen bigger than when it was when you first logged in. So just keep that in mind, make your web browser full screen and you should be good. All right, going back to our little demo here. That's done. Now, I'm just gonna stick my, has anybody asked any questions yet in the live stream? Nope, nothing, okay. If you have any questions about the SecureConnect process so far, I encourage you to chat them in the live stream. I'm now gonna move on to the next section of our discussion here, and that is using RDP plus OpenVPN or OpenVPN and PCC EHR. OpenVPN is a great solution on your own computer, something that you have in your possession, that you have the ability to install software on. and have full admin rights to. If you don't have that, so for instance, if it's a company-based computer and you're not allowed to install software, OpenVPN is not for you. You can work with your IT vendor or your in-office administrator to get the tool installed, but in order to use it, you also have to run it as an administrator, and that can be problematic. So it's a great tool. It allows us to run the EHR on your workstation over this VPN connection, and it's just like you're in the office in many respects. But there are two things that you need to know. It's ideal for your home computer, but you do need admin rights. A couple of things about OpenVPN. It's constantly evolving. Security changes on a regular basis. New bugs are found, new vulnerabilities are found, and the security generally gets updated, new features come along. So VPN or OpenVPN needs some care and feeding. And we've run into a situation a couple of times in the last few years where the version of the OpenVPN client that's on your computer gives you a warning and says you need to update, and you update, but now you're ahead of the version that's in on the PCC server in your office, and either you need to downgrade your client or we need to upgrade the server side. And as soon as we make a change to the server, it affects all remote users. So that can be problematic. If we needed to do a security update, for example, we then have to redistribute the keys to however many remote users there are. And this is not a bad thing. It's just time consuming, and it can lead to a lot of anxiety. Up until very recently, we said if you needed to print from home, you needed to use OpenVPN and PCC EHR or OpenVPN and RDP. And when I say up until recently, I actually mean Tuesday of this week. On Tuesday of this week, we finalized some testing, and we have deployed at 2 sites for testing the ability to print via SecureConnect. That was not an option prior to Tuesday. So if you're using OpenVPN and all of its complexities just so you can print at home, you can actually start using SecureConnect for that process once we've released this change. Now, the released change is we're hoping to put it in line with our upcoming EHR release, but our EHR releases started testing this morning as well, and we may not be able to get the two to match. But we will put out a general announcement to that feature, and you will know when it's available to you because there will be an additional printer when you go to print called Print to SecureConnect. And if you have that, it should print for you. It's actually really quite slick. All right, so that was just, actually, I'll go back a second. So essentially, if you're using OpenVPN right now because you need the printing feature at home, understand that within the next 2 weeks, you'll probably have the ability to print from SecureConnect, and you can go with this other model, which you may find simpler, you may not. You may also love OpenVPN and you want to stick with it. But now we have options. You can print from both, which is awesome. Any questions come in? No? All right. That's great. All right, so which of these products should I use? I would recommend that you use SecureConnect anytime you need to access the system remotely, unless there is something that OpenVPN can do for you that SecureConnect cannot. Now, up until Tuesday, or very recently, that was printing. The other one that's still an issue is scanning. If you need to be remote and scan into the PCC system, you're still going to want to use OpenVPN. And if you're remote and need to use the print to EHR feature remotely, you're also going to want to use the VPN. And that's probably aimed at people who are remote right now who are doing referrals or chart migrations because that opportunity is available during this time with some diminished number of patients in many offices. Some tasks have been reassigned, and a lot of people are taking this opportunity to actually catch up on some things they hadn't been able to do previously. So that's my 2 cents on which you should use. I would say SecureConnect first and OpenVPN if you really need to after that. All right, so there's a couple of things that we just want to go over here. Things we hope that you picked up from today. The fact that safeguarding the patient PHI is actually something that's on PCC and you, but mostly you, because if you share your credentials with somebody, then that's kind of like the straw that breaks the camel's back. I would encourage everybody to go and play with that password security tool just to get an idea of which passwords work and which passwords don't. If you have a password right now that is 8 or less characters, then I encourage you to change it to something that's 8 characters, at least 8 characters. I still come across people who have set their password to 1, 2, 3, 4, or their name. Not a PCC, because I work with people outside of the organization, but there are still people who are like, oh, well, I couldn't think of it, so my name's Fred, so I used Frederick as a password. Brilliant, but not really. So that I want you to take away. Safeguarding your PHI is really, really important, and the strength of your password is probably the only thing that's stopping people accessing your system if they happen to have your token. If you are not using a 2-factor authentication method, so the SecureConnect with a phone or OpenVPN, then I suggest you switch to that. If you're using RDP and RDP alone to connect to your office, we will have said this a number of times, you need to change that process. We have a number of people who have chosen to continue to use RDP for legacy reasons, but I strongly encourage you to consider whether that is the right thing to do. The other thing is, everything I've talked about today is documented in Learn. Learn.pcc.com is a great resource. And the last snippet is, while it may take you a little bit longer to log into the web page and find the token off your phone, that additional level of security should outweigh just being able to type a password and go. Because if you can type a password and go, the chances are somebody can also guess a username and guess a password. It is quite common for us to observe attempts made on client systems where somebody's just using essentially a baby name book with all of the baby names in it, and they just start at A and they go all the way through Z, and for every one of those names, they're trying the simple passwords, the name with 1, 2, 3, just 1, 2, 3, 4, the word password as a password. So things like that. So just keep those things in mind. All righty, so wrapping a few things up here, because I was leaving some time for some questions and answers, but we'll see. How to connect to SecureConnect. This is the web link for that. And also the link to Authy's support desk. A note about Authy while I think about it, and that is that I mentioned that Authy is not a PCC application. It's an application we use. Authy's help desk is also awesome. Just about every conceivable problem you can think of with Authy, they have documented in their FAQ. I got a new phone, what do? I know because I looked on their website at their support and looked at it. They have recommendations about if you're planning on changing a phone, what your steps should be. They have recommendations about what you should use for a strong password, what you shouldn't use. They discuss the concept of authentication and security in way more detail than I would ever want to have to explain to anybody. So they're good resources for you to use, and you'll be able to get to them from either reviewing this video later on or the slide deck that goes along with this, which will be on our website also. All right, so now I'm going to see if there's actually any questions, and there's still no questions.
There aren't any questions, but don't kid yourself. There is some real excitement about being able to print from home.
There is?
Yeah, there is.
All right, so I'm actually just going to do so. I've been staring at my screen and trying not to pay attention to offside here. So I'm actually going to go to the live session. Is this where it's all happening, or is it all in the lobby?
Yeah, no, it's in the live session.
All right, so in the live session, I would love a thumbs up if you think printing is going to change your life with this remote connection thing in the little thing there. I'll take a look and see if any comes up.
There's the challenge, folks. A thumbs up if you're excited about getting on the printing from home chain.
Yes. Two things there. One is you need to learn how to do a thumbs up in Mattermost. And the other one is, yeah, no, that's just it. I don't know how to do it.
Hey, you're getting it. Here it comes.
Oh, I figured Dr. Orton would be right on that.
See?
Excellently. Oh, Michelle.
You explained it so well.
That. Brenna, excellent. This is
you explained it so
stuff.
well. No one has any questions, and you delivered the delight of the day.
Yes. So because nobody's got any questions, I'm actually going to just go back to our SecureConnect page here, where I'm showing you the users conference. And I want to mention down in the bottom right-hand corner, I don't know if you can see, I'm going to see if I don't know how to highlight in this wonderful tool, but in the bottom right-hand corner, there's a number down there. It says 1.0.0, very tiny writing. When that goes to 1.1, you are definitely going to have the SecureConnect printing option available to you. We're going to utilize that numbering going up one. So 1.0, it's not there unless you're one of our alpha testers. And it's really alpha, like I said, Tuesday. Once you see that at 1.1, SecureConnect is definitely there. It may be there we may roll it in 1.0, but it's definitely going to be in the 1.1. And a couple of areas where the remote printing for SecureConnect is not going to be ideal, and that is the printing of claims, the HCFA 1500 forms. I know, I just heard a big sigh. Oh. The HCFA 1500 forms are a very specific format and require specific margins. And while we've built that into the PCC product when sending directly to the printer, we have not yet found a way inside SecureConnect to preserve those very tight margins. So that's a bit of a problem. It is on our list of things to try and hit with a stick and make work, but for the time being, I will say, if you want to print claims, print them on a printer in your office that you know. Hopefully, most of you aren't having to print claims now. You're able to submit them electronically and submit your secondaries electronically. And only occasionally when you've got a really tedious insurance company do you really need to do that. Unfortunately, there's still way too many of those tedious insurance companies. But for the time being, everything else we've tested with this works well. Even the pretty reports out of the EHR and partner work well. We've had did some bill run testing yesterday with a client. That was great. But the HCFA form thing, not great, not yet. So anyway, that once that number cycles through to 1.1, SecureConnect printing will definitely be there. Unless we send out an announcement to say, hey, it's there now. Right. Oh, here's a little fun test here. If somebody would like to send along something that they think is a reasonably secure password, I will type it into our little enter password thing here, and we'll see how it is. Do not type your own password.
I was just going to ask you if that was a test.
It was a test, but I realized it's not really a test. HIC for printing, that's actually a very good password. Let's see how that one goes in. That's not really what you typed as a password. Sherry, I know, I'm goofing. But apparently, HIC for printing is a very, very good password. It will take 923,000 years to crack that password. So Cherry wins a prize. She now knows what to set her password to. And I can't tell whether the feed's a little behind as well. Oh, Jason's saying happy123 was one of his passwords. Let's see. Yes, apparently, while Jason is happy, his password is sadly not very secure. All righty. I'm going to guess Simon123 is now Jason's new password, which is a little better. I can't imagine it is, but anyway. All right. Excellent. Well, I am looking to see if I'm not seeing any new questions, no things.
Not anything new.
I don't have anything new.
But the beautiful thing is that this will persist.
It will. It'll be here forever.
And ever.
I'll look this good forever. So as the hair recedes further and gets grayer, I will still always look this good at PCC. You can go watch the whole thing again on our YouTube channel and on the UC webpage.
Indeed. Well, thank you so much, Lewis. This was awesome.
All righty. Well, thank you. Thank you all who showed up today and watched the video.